Today on Sports Central, I'll be going over our next schedule preview this offseason, and it will be over the Florida State Seminoles. And this was a team that went 6-7 in the 2019 season. And yeah, they fired Willie Taggart after the season, so now they've got a new head coach, and his name is Mike Norvell. And he was previously from Memphis, and this should be an interesting season. I really trust Mike Norvell. I think he's a great coach. I mean, obviously he did a great job with Memphis over the past couple of years, but yeah, once again, today we're going to be going over a few players that this team will be losing, who they've been returning, and also going over their schedule for the first time this offseason. Starting off the games that this team has had since November, and yep, on November 2nd they played Miami at home. That was a loss there, 10-27. They also had a win the following week against Boston College on the road, 38-31. They had a blowout win against Alabama State, 49-42 on the 16th. Then they had two, somewhat terrible losses. They lost to Florida, of course, on the road, 17-40, and in a very winnable game there against Arizona State, they ended up getting lost there too, 14-20. So yeah, overall they were 2-3 between November and the rest of the season, and yeah, it was good that they were able to make it to a bowl game. They barely edged that, of course. Yeah, if they would have lost to either Boston College or Alabama State, which definitely they wouldn't have lost to Alabama State, but yeah, my point is Florida State wouldn't have made it to a bowl game. So yeah, they were pretty close between there. But yeah, between September and October, this team was 4-4, and once again between November and the rest of the season, they were 2-3. Moving on to returning production for Florida State, they returned their top quarterback in James Blackman, which he was a big part of this team last season. He had just over 2,300 yards of offense with 17 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. However, they do lose their second quarterback, Alex Hornibrook, which he had some yardage on this team as well. He had just right around 1,000 yards of offense with 7 touchdowns and 2 interceptions last season. Of course, he transferred in from Wisconsin before the 2019 season even started. So, yeah, both of those quarterbacks, they split time last season, but they also lose their top running back in Cam Akers. Yeah, he was drafted. He had over 1,300 yards of offense last season with 18 touchdowns, and he was quite possibly the best offensive player for this team. They also returned their top wide receiver in Tamorion Terry, which he was a big part of this team as well. Definitely high up there with one of the best players on this team. He had just right around 1,200 yards with 9 touchdowns last season. They also returned their second wide receiver, DJ Matthews, which he had just right around 400 yards with 3 touchdowns. So there's a major gap between their first and second receivers. Of course, Terry once again had just right around 1,200 yards, and DJ Matthews just had right around 400. And yeah, they also returned several other wide receivers. I think there's like 3 or 4 other receivers that this team is returning, and they have all got 200 yards, right around 200 yards each. So yeah, I'm not going to name off all of those names right now, but yeah, just so you know, they also, and their only other wide receiver lost there is Keith Gavin, which, yeah, he was one of those wide receivers that had right around 200 yards last season. So yeah, that's good for this Florida State team. Their receiving core definitely should be pretty good next season. I would expect them to be very improved heading into the 2020 season. That should be a big bright spot to this offense. They also lose 2 offensive linemen, 1 defensive lineman, and 2 in the secondary. And this defense should make major strides, I think, in the 2020 season. I mean, when you're only losing 3 defensive players going into 2020, that's going to be huge for Florida State. No doubt on that one. So, yeah, you could expect this defense to definitely be very improved heading into 2020. And, yeah, will Florida State improve in 2020? I'd have to say that it's going to be really close, but I think that they definitely will be sticking around right in the same area as to where they were in the 2019 season. I don't expect them to be any big surprise ACC team next season. Of course, once again, I really like Mike Norvell. I think he's a great coach, but I don't expect him to turn Florida State around quite that quickly. I think that this team definitely has a ton of potential with James Blackman if he can lower his interceptions there. Yeah, definitely Florida State. I think this is a team that should be able to make it to a bowl game next season. But the biggest problem for Florida State going into 2020, I mean, their returning production is pretty good. Their biggest problem is going to be their schedule, is what we're going over next. Of course, this is a really tough schedule, in my opinion. I mean, you got several really tough teams here. Yeah, you got West Virginia to kick off this season. That is in a neutral location. Let me remind you that West Virginia definitely, I think, will be a very improved team going into 2020. So you got to watch out for that game. You also play Samford on the 12th. That'll probably be your easiest game of the season. You got Boise State on the 19th on the road. I wouldn't really worry about that game as much. The only main problem with that game would be the road. I mean, of course, it's like all the way across the country for Florida State. Yeah, definitely Boise State. I think Boise State won't be near as good in 2020 as they were in 2019, but yeah, you could still expect the game to be a tougher one. You got NC State, then a couple weeks later on the road, you got Clemson, Wake Forest in consecutive weeks. You got Louisville and Pittsburgh to finish off October. Then in November, you got Miami, Boston College, Syracuse, and then a game against Florida to finish off the regular season. So, yeah, this is a pretty tough schedule for Florida State. Definitely one of the tougher ones in the ACC. I'd probably put it in my top 10 or 15 most difficult schedules of the 2020 season for all Power 5 conference teams. But yeah, here's what I'm expecting. I'll give you 2 projected wins for Florida State. I'll give you West Virginia and Samford. And yeah, it's kind of borderline on the West Virginia game, but I think they'll get the win there. Yeah, so record estimation will be 5-7 to 7-5. And I think if Florida State had an easier schedule, and once again, this is a bit of a tougher schedule, no doubt on that. Yeah, so if they had an easier schedule, I'd probably say maybe 6-6 to 8-4. But yeah, just with it being as tough of a schedule as it is, I mean, when you got Louisville on the road, you have to play Clemson, of course, at home, and no matter where you play Clemson, it's going to be tough. You also have a couple of really tough road games against possibly Miami. Syracuse could be improved. Florida. I mean, yeah, for Florida State, it's going to be a bit of a tougher schedule. So, yeah, when's coming? Your record estimation will be 5-7 to 7-5. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Florida State. Let me know whether you think they'll be improved or worse. Yeah, be sure to let me know in the comments below. I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on that. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching. If you enjoyed this schedule preview, be sure to slap a like on it. Subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel, so I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching once again. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.